Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. John Cafferty brings the Beaver Brown Band to Rams Head in Annapolis, Maryland on Friday, followed by the Hamilton in Washington, D.C. on Saturday. I spoke to Cafferty about his rise from Rhode Island to record 80s hits, including the soundtracks for Eddie and the Cruisers and Rocky IV. Hey, John Cafferty, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in D.C.
Hey, Jason, how you doing, bud?
Really good. Where are you calling us from? Aren't you you said you're in Atlantic City right now? Were you walking the boardwalk?
I was. We actually played outside on the boardwalk last night. Beautiful night, just great. It's just, with the kind of songs that, we do a lot of summer songs, a lot of imagery and stuff. And, playing in that setting really brings the songs to life. So it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And then I guess, well, I was going to say it's near where you grew up, but kind of. I mean, aren't you from Rhode Island originally? Is that where you're from?
Yeah, we're just up the road. Most of the guys are from either Rhode Island or Massachusetts. And, played every bar and every hall that had electricity up and down the East Coast when we first started. It was a lot of fun.
And if it didn't have electricity, it did when you were finished with it, baby. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell me how, I always love to hear sort of the origins of how you got into this racket to begin with. So, what sort of stuff did you grow up listening to? How'd you get your first instrument? Give me the origin story of John Cafferty.
Oh, wow. It's, I don't know if I can remember that far back, but, I remember my cousin Stevie Smith and I, he still has a band, got a great 10-piece horn band called Steve Smith and Naked Truth up here in Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame guys like ourselves. And, when we were kids, going to see the Elvis movies and stuff in the theaters and just sort of interested, but, we didn't want to be Elvis. It looked too scary. But when we went to see Hard Day's Night, guys my age, I mean, it was just something about the look in the eyes of those guys up on the screen that just made it look like so much fun, and that you could do it with your buddies, So my cousin Smitty and I started a band. We had to be like 13 years old, 14 years old, and never turned back, just kept going all these years.
Yeah, that Hard Day's Night movie with the Beatles. I mean, that's still one of the coolest movies ever made, and everyone should go check that out if somehow they missed it. It's so good. Well, awesome. Where did the name Beaver Brown come from originally? How did you? I mean, it's catchy as hell. How'd you come up with it?
It's I never heard it called catchy, but
hey, I'm being nice.
There you go.
It's memorable.
Yeah. We were starting out. We had rehearsed for about a year. We were actually pretty good, but hadn't played anywhere. Got a job at the University of Rhode Island, and they needed a name to put on the poster, and we didn't really have a name, so we went out and got a case of beer, and we sat down and we started drinking and thinking and looking around the room and just naming off things that we saw in the room. And somebody said Beaver Brown. We said, what the heck is that? And it was a can of paint that was sitting on the floor that we had used to paint one of the walls inside of the rehearsal space that we were in.
Oh, so it's a shade of brown. It's a paint, of paint.
So, but it was from, this was like 1972. So, bands had crazy names back in those days. So we said, well, it's not a very good name, but we'll just use it for this week, and we'll figure out something cool next week.
There you go.
We played and ended up getting another job, and the next thing I know, I was talking to you.
Yeah, you skipped over a lot in the middle there. But that's cool. Beaver brown. I didn't know that it was a shade of paint. I remember Bob Ross, the painter, always had Van Dyke brown, but Beaver brown. There you go. I never knew that.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, tell me about I guess you guys first come on the scene with what was it, Wild Summer Nights and Tender Years. Who wrote those? How did those songs come together?
I wrote them, and we were trying to get a record deal. We were a pretty good bar band. In fact, we were a bar band extraordinaire. I mean, we played, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, 4, 5, 6 sets a night. We were pretty good at what we were doing, and we did that for like a decade. And we were trying to get a record deal, and it was hard to come by, so we decided we would make our own single and maybe get some airplay locally. And we recorded Wild Summer Nights, and the flip side was Tender Years. And they started playing it in Boston, New York, Cleveland, Philly, Washington, D.C. DC 101 used to play it down there, and got a ton of airplay. Didn't get a record deal, but got a lot of airplay out of it. But eventually led to to movies in Hollywood.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, you didn't get a record deal, but you did get a movie soundtrack deal there. Eddie and the Cruisers, of course, the fictional band for the movie, but you all did the soundtrack. Just tell me about that whole experience. Like, that's got to be a different approach to writing a typical album. You're sitting there trying to write stuff that's eventually going to be in a movie, but how does that process even work?
Well, as legend has it, this guy Kenny Vance, who was in a band called Jay and the Americans back in the day, back in the '60s, and his producers were Leiber and Stoller. I mean, if you know anything about the early days of rock and roll, Leiber and Stoller worked with Elvis Presley and the Drifters and Phil Spector, and just on and on. So pretty close to the origins of rock and roll. So, Kenny was, his roots were in that kind of music. And walking down the street one night in Greenwich Village, and he heard the sound of our band playing. We were playing in New York City for pizza and beer, I think, trying to get discovered. And he just heard the music. He walked in, he listened to us play. We never met him. Didn't know he was there, but we knew that he left with a smile on his face, because a year later he called us up and said he had a movie script called Eddie and the Cruisers, and he thought our music might fit the movie well.
That's awesome. Did you ever have the stars come up after the fact, Tom Berenger or Michael Pare, like any of them ever come up afterwards and say, "Thank you, you made our movie"?
Yeah, we met them. They actually, before they made the movie, they came up and saw us play up in Rhode Island with the director of the movie, and Southside Johnny came up, who was an old friend, and he was one of the movie consultants, music consultants for the film. And they all came up and watched this up in Rhode Island, and we sort of said hey, and they went down to the Jersey Shore and shot the film, and I stayed home and wrote songs, trying to fill out the musical part of the script.
Awesome. Yeah. On the Dark Side, all those were from that soundtrack. I guess Tender Years got brought back for that too. So there you go. Yeah, it was anyone that lived through the 80s will remember that one for sure. All right. And then after that, you all followed up with your next album, Tough All Over, which, obviously, in the Eddie and the Cruisers was a soundtrack, but this was a album here. And the hit title track, I might even top one of the charts. I can't remember, maybe mainstream rock or mainstream, something like that. But yeah. What was the inspiration for Tough All Over?
Well, we had always had in mind what we wanted to do for our first album, and then the movie soundtrack came along, and songs like Wild Summer Nights and Tender Years were gone to the movie soundtrack, so that was kind of like two big songs that would have been on our debut album. So I sort of went in a different direction, and I started writing songs, that were a little more, a little more crafted towards the radio, but still had something to say, message wise. And I was really proud of the fact that, both Tough All Over and CITY became pretty big hits for us. And they had something to say, and they would hit records, and we got ourselves out there without the aid of any movie soundtracks or anything else. We were just a band standing on our own 2 feet, and really proud of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, you prove you could do it on your own 2 feet for sure. You didn't need the movies. Definitely. Well, ironically, then Hollywood came calling again. Sly Stallone, does he call you up and say, "Hey, I'm making Rocky 4. I need a soundtrack for when Rocky's training in Russia against Drago, climbing the mountain and yelling, Drago!" tell us about how Hearts on Fire. How did Stallone task you to do that, or did you record it before he asked?
Got a call from the record company saying that Sly wanted me to come down to the studio and sing a song for Rocky 4. I'd never heard it before. I mean, I walked in the studio and he was there, and they played me Hearts on Fire. And, I just sort of listened to it down for the first time. And I kind of knew what he wanted. He wanted like that big sort of like, scream from, the bottom of your toes to the top of your head, sort of that big raspy sound. So, I sang the chorus for him, and he really liked it. He liked that song a lot. Put it in the movie like a few times in Rocky 4. It's the scene where he's climbing up the mountain, the whole workout scene that he does. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So my worlds are coming together because actually tomorrow night we're playing in a place called Summers Point, New Jersey, which is right down on the beach. That's where they shot the movie Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh, cool.
And the guy who's bringing us down, his dad owned the club where they shot the film called Tony Mart's. So we're playing there at 6:30. At 9:30, they're bringing us up to Atlantic City, and we're opening the show for Frank Stallone, Sly's brother, and Sly's going to be the MC. So talk about my worlds coming together like all these years later. So.
That's awesome. So you'll be opening for Frank Stallone, as well on the same day that you're doing Eddie and the Cruisers tie-in concert too. So your movie themes are all tying together.
How about that?
That's awesome. I mean, come on, like it probably's got to be wild to think that, all these years later, how many freaking people have worked out to that song? I mean, that Rocky 4 soundtrack. I mean, of course, it was Survivor, Burning Heart. It had Robert Tepper's No Easy Way Out, James Brown, Living in America. There were so many great songs, but Hearts on Fire, that is saved for the big final montage, the training montage before the big fight. Drago's shooting up roids, and Stallone is doing the the contrast there, splitting wood and doing crunches in midair. You got the future technology training versus the old school grit. But I mean, have you ever worked out to the song, or what's the idea of the idea that so many people probably have?
I just I mean, Sly back in those days, I mean, he's still in pretty good shape from what I see, but back in those days, I mean, he was just ripped,
Yeah.
And he was the inspiration to a lot of people who wanted to get in shape. He just he was pretty good at it. So maybe they thought working out the Hearts on Fire was part of the answer. I don't know.
It's a really awesome song. Well, very, very cool. You also, the band name also entered pop culture. I remember watching Saturday Night Live one time, and they were doing that, the Will Ferrell Celebrity Jeopardy skits, and Jimmy Fallon gave your band name, the Beaver Brown Band, as an answer to one of them. What did you think when you saw that?
I can remember, my wife and I were, sitting up, sort of watching the show, but not paying close attention. And all of a sudden I went, "What did he just say? Did they say the name of my band?" Yeah, it was like it was. It was back before the days where you could rewind television.
Yeah, it's live.
And I was like, "Did he really? Did they say the name of our band?" Yeah, it was surprising. But my whole life has been surprising. What we've accomplished over the years, having a band that's been together as long as we have. Having taken the roller coaster ride through the music business, and come out of it with smiles on our faces and guitars still in our hands. I mean, we're pretty fortunate.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so much else we could talk about. We won't keep you all day, because you did, the Roadhouse album and Eddie and the Cruisers too, Eddie Lives, all that stuff. But let's bring it full circle to, the reason we're here, the Hamilton show in DC on September 10th. What have you ever played there before? It's a pretty intimate spot, but have you ever been down here?
No, never played the Hamilton, but DC back in the days, even before the film came out, we were a staple down there in the DC area, playing down at the Bayou over in Georgetown. I mean, we played the area quite a bit, had so many friends in the DC area, still do. I would imagine there's going to be a guest list down there, but we're very, very much looking forward to it. It's going to be like an old home week for us. So get your tickets, because it's going to be a good crowd.
Oh, yeah. Definitely get your tickets. Again, it's John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. It's going to be on Saturday, September 10th at the Hamilton Live in D.C. at 8 p.m. So get your tickets now. John Cafferty, thank you so much again for doing this. It was a blast catching up with you. We'll let you get back to, the Atlantic City Boardwalk there.
All right. Sounds good.
We'll see you at the Hamilton. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.